You're welcome back to The Conversation on News Central Television. It's time for us to switch gears into our second topic of the day. The United Arab Emirates has reportedly banned nationals of some 20 African countries from entering its capital city, Dubai. Countries affected by the visa ban include Uganda, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Sudan, Cameroon, Nigeria, Liberia, Burundi, Republic of Guinea, Gambia, Togo, Democratic Republic of Congo, Senegal, Benin, Ivory Coast, Congo, Rwanda, Burkina Faso, Guinea Bissau, Comoros Islands, and the Dominican Republic.
In a notice issued to trade partners, including travel agents, authorities indicated that all applications should be rejected. Now, in quote, it said any applications from the above-mentioned countries will be sent back or cancelled. Now, according to reports, this is not the first time some African countries have been banned from entering Dubai. In December 2021, the Emirates Airlines announced that 8 African countries will not be accepted to travel through Dubai until further notice due to the spread of COVID-19. It is, however, not clear the reason behind the latest ban. And now joining us for this conversation, we have Ibidolapo Ajayi, a global affairs analyst all the way from Texas, US, United States of America. Thank you so much for joining us on The Conversation.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, so first off, what do you make of this visa ban on nationals from 20 African nationals by the authorities of the UAE?
It's not surprising news, frankly, because if you think about it, every country has a duty to protect their borders. And of recent, we've had a lot of Nigerians, for example, that are leaving the country and seeking greener pastures elsewhere. And typically, when people get to other countries, one of the issues that the host countries have is that they start seeing people either overstaying their visas, and then that becomes a problem because obviously they are there for economic reasons. The underlying issue that I think is happening there is probably not just the fact that there could be people overstaying visas, but there might be other things that they're engaging that are not, that are to the detriment of the citizens of the United Arab Emirates. So, for example, crime, possibly human trafficking, possibly prostitution, a whole lot of issues. And when these things start to happen, these countries will panic because if you think about it, the UAE is a tourist, they're a tourist destination for a lot of people. And as such, they will not want situations that will affect their own economic well-being. The flip side of this is that people that do legitimate business in the United Arab Emirates from these African countries are also affected. So it's a real conundrum that will need to be sorted out really quickly.
Ajayi, okay. My next question is, what reasons have been given by the government of the UAE for this visa ban? It seems like they're stereotyping because they singled out 20 African nations, and the only country that is not African on this list is the Dominican Republic. It's quite unprecedented when you look at the history of diplomatic relations with continents and nations. You know, just grouping. The only person that did this was former President Donald Trump in what people have termed the racist and Muslim ban.
It's not difficult to kind of see what they're doing here. They're probably profiling countries that typically have a lot of people emigrating and leaving their countries. If you look at the list, most of those countries are West African countries and a couple of Central African countries and East African countries. I didn't see any Southern African countries there, really. There were no North African countries on the list. So you tend to wonder why is this concentrated on West African countries. But given the economic conditions, for example, in Nigeria, and the recent issues that Ghana, for example, is also having, people are beginning to seek greener pastures elsewhere. And when they start seeing this influx of people from other countries, they start to think, well, maybe they're here not just for economic reasons, but also to exploit the system. Here in the United States, immigration is also a big issue, you know, and you hear issues about the government trying to protect the border and to secure, and make sure that the wrong people are not coming into the country. The UAE have not really given any specific reasons for doing this. One can only,
speculate.
allude to possibly underlying factors that they might be saying, the authorities might be saying in the Emirates to arrive at this decision. But it's rather unfortunate. My hope is that the governments of the affected African countries can quickly step up and engage with the UAE authorities to understand what's clearly going on there, because this will affect people that are not meant to be affected. So they need to have conversations as quickly as possible so that people with legitimate reasons to travel to these countries are able to do so, and people with businesses in the UAE do not suffer from this.
All right, thank you so much, Ibidolapo. Now also joining us is Ambassador Joe Keshi, former Federal Permanent Secretary. Now, thank you so much for joining us on the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, Ambassador Keshi, a lot of people have been taken aback by this news of the visa ban, and we've been clearly highlighting almost 20 African countries have been listed so far. I mean, what are we supposed to make of this?
Well, I think the first thing, as the last speaker said, is for us to find out the exact reasons for the action of the UAE government. But as you rightly pointed out, they must have some very good and genuine reasons for doing what they've done. And it is now left for us to negotiate with them and see whether they can lift the ban. But this is not only limited to Nigeria. There are a couple of other African countries, mostly from West African countries. So my advice will be that we'll address this as a regional problem. But then when you look very closely at it, it's probably because they want to protect their own society, given the increasing influx of people from West Africa and from African states, most of whom you can actually describe as economic refugees. And when you have this kind of situation, it creates an extra burden on the recipient states. And this, often leads to what you have, the action that has been taken by the UAE government. And so I just think that rather than cry over spilled milk, rather than begin to wonder why, rather than begin to consider and lose our heads over the fact that we can't go to Dubai, I think that we need to now take a closer look at home and see whether we can make home Nigeria comfortable for all Nigerians, so that a lot of Nigerians do not begin to leave this country as economic migrants. And there's no other way until you put some order in your own house, until you make your own country comfortable for the people. They'll begin to go out to a number of countries, and the consequences of it all is that when they go to these countries and they misbehave, of course, a country like, UAE, which is well policed, who does not want its society corrupted, would take the necessary action to protect its own society. And this is where we are. So in other words, in summary, I'm saying, look, we probably had this coming, but the other side of it is that we can call off the bluff and decide that we are going to take care of our own society and rebuild our community. But if we are going to spend more time crying that we can't get to Dubai, well, it all shows you that hope is lost for this country.
Now, Ambassador Keshi, staying with you, you did mention some of the reasons that might be why the United Arab Emirates has decided to take this measure. But you would agree with me as a career diplomat that this is extreme. Do you expect a response from the African Union, or should these 20 individual African nations look at the relationship with the United Arab Emirates and re-examine it? Because it's not the only country people are migrating to as economic migrants. You have the United States there, you have countries in Europe, and at no point in their history have they issued a blanket ban, because a lot of analysts have said, it smacks of a bit of racism here. What would you suggest beyond looking inwards? Because the image of Africa is at stake here. What should be the appropriate response from the African Union to this visa ban? Should they reciprocate and prevent citizens of the United Arab Emirates from visiting?
I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. But you see, when you talk of reciprocity, it's like if you hit me, it's like when you talk of balance of terror. The balance of terror theory is very simple. If you decide to be the first to strike, be aware of the consequences of me replying back. Because when I respond back, the chances I will create more damage, I will cause more damage than you have caused by taking the first action. What am I trying to say? How many UAR citizens come to Nigeria that you have to retaliate? So your ability to retaliate, let anybody come and tell me, is very high. Your ability to retaliate is very, very, very low, if not extremely low. So you can't really retaliate because you do not have a number, you do not have large number of people from the UAR coming to Nigeria. So what are you going to do? Remember when they also decided to stop flying to this country because the CBN at that time, the CBN do not allow them to
repatriate their funds.
Take out, some of the airlines' money that was held up at the CBN. What did we do? We caved in. We called them. The CBN called a meeting, and the matter was reviewed. Reviewed, and airlines were paid. It was also, interestingly enough, it was at the time we were claiming we had no money to pay teachers. But we elites, you and I, maybe inclusive, we were quick to pay Emirates and the rest of them so that we can continue to fly out. And so you do not have the abilities, regrettably, and sorry about that. Anybody who says they can, you can decide that you ban your citizens from going to UAR. Yes, they might not fly to UAR from Nigeria. They should go somewhere else and fly into UAR, but they can. But as long as they're Nigerians, until the ban is lifted, they cannot get a visa. So that's why I said let's deal this as a regional issue, not just as a Nigerian issue, and let's leave this whole question of discrimination. The United States have always been an immigrant country, and so they welcome all the immigrants, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But bear in mind that today in the United States, the Republican Party is trying to change that concept and decide that only the good guys should come to the United States. Only professionals should come to the United States. And a number of other countries in the Western world are also saying the same thing. So for us in this country, again, I go back to what I said at the starting point. We can call up their bluffs and say to hell with them, and then we put some order in our own society. But if we are going to continue to cry that UAR has banned us and it's discriminatory, it's all this and that, we must retaliate, we must fight and so on, then we are not a serious nation. They banned you for whatever reason. Put your own house in order to start with. That's the first thing. But if the elites believe that they cannot do without going to UAR, and some of them have investments there, of course, look, sooner or later, I can tell you what these guys might probably do. They will look at those with investment in that country and quietly give those businessmen and so on, and then give them visas. And the rest, they are.
Okay, Ambassador Keshi is talking about looking inward. Now, Ibidolapo, if you can hear me.
To do. They will just not give them visas. So these are most likely things they will do. But look, we can engage them if we want to. Again, if for nothing else, to find the reasons for this action. But if you ask me, I'll just say, look, let's not waste our time. Because Nigerians can go anywhere else and spend their money. If somebody says, I don't want you in my country, we shouldn't lose sleep over that. But what I'm saying is, the consequences of so many Nigerians traveling out to a number of countries, particularly to some of these countries that are very protective and that have established the kind of people they want in their country. We we should be very careful. They don't want, look, let's be frank. They don't want economic immigrants in their country, pure and simple. And if that's the kind of people they are receiving today and they are misbehaving, you cannot blame them. Every country takes action based on its own national interests.
All right. Thank you so much, Ambassador Kesh. I would like to bring in Ibidolapo into this now. Now, everybody's talking about their own personal interests and why they are supposed to do certain things. Now, African countries are also going there and investing in these countries, in the UAE and all that. But don't you think, Ibidolapo, that this visa ban is a bit too extreme, no matter the reasons that they are given, even though they've not really given full diplomatic reasons why these visa bans are happening?
Use the word extreme. It's a little bit, out of the ordinary. I would say it's not usual to just get a blanket ban on a whole lot of countries, maybe one or two, but to have a whole list of 20 countries just to receive a ban, yes, that's unusual, highly unusual. Now, it's relative when we talk about how extreme one can consider this, because as we speak, we still don't have the real reasons why they've done that. And as Ambassador Keshi had said, this is something that perhaps the regional body can take up and have discussions with the UAE authorities as to exactly why this is happening. Again, the very, very important points that the ambassador mentioned for me is, how this should lead us to look inwards as African countries, to look at actually, bringing our countries up to standard, because what you've been finding is, even when we talk about investments in some of these countries, Dubai, for example, the reports have it that Nigerians hold probably most of the properties in that country. So, I mean, what are we talking about? These are people putting their money where they want, but they go and buy properties there. So why don't we create our own Dubais in Africa? Where people actually take money from Nigeria, they go spend it in Ghana, and vice versa. Let's develop our own continent. I will be hearing talk about some of our states and cities in Nigeria being the Dubais of Africa. Well, let's make that happen and let people stay home and focus on developing, our own countries and the continent. That's the way I say it, because every country at the end of the day have the authority and the right to protect their interests, economic and otherwise. So just like the ambassador said, we can't cry over this. Let's use this as a time to, reflect and figure out what we need to do. But at the end of the day, it will still be good to see that people that have legitimate reasons for going to the UAE are able to do so. And the governments of the affected countries should start those discussions. And even if it has to happen at the regional level, let it start immediately so that people do not, lose their livelihood.
Thank you, Ibidolapo. Just before we wrap things up on today's conversation, Ambassador Keshi, will these visa ban will they have any effects on trade between the UAE and the African countries, looking at the relationship between countries now and not individuals traveling to those countries?
Let me add something before I answer your question. Now, let's be clear about Nigerians entering into the country. If my understanding of their ban is correct, they have not expelled Nigerians living in their country. There are two different things. Or they've not expelled Africans living in their country. It's just that they will not give visas, to new applications, as they've done recently, rejected a number of applications. So that should tell us that they were very, very careful in deciding what to do so that nobody says that this is racism or this is that, and that. So I just want to make that point that Nigerians living there have not been expelled, but new entrants or new Africans or new West Africans coming in are the ones that have problems getting in. That's number one. And to your question about, those who have invested or whether it will affect trade. The only way it can affect trade is for us to find out what exactly do they import from Nigeria or what does Nigeria import to UAE. But if you look very clearly, the trade is probably almost one-sided. We go there to do a number of things. Traders go in there to buy so many things and sell in this country. For those traders, they can get all those they want, the things they want from other countries. So the only way it can affect trade is that Nigerian traders, and importers might just divert their, route to somewhere else and avoid going to UAE. In that case, look, countries make this decision, as I said, they would have done their calculations. They would have looked at the data and said, look, how much do these Nigerians bring? Yes, they bring significant amount of money, some of them stealing money from the Republic, from the Commonwealth of this nation to buy houses is a way. It could also be after a number of, they arrested a hush puppy there. They've had problems with a number of, high wealth people. It could also be that when they begin to look at where the money is coming from, they are being careful so as not to so that people do not use their country as a state for laundering money.
But Ambassador Keshi, it's not just, sorry to butt in there, it's not just African countries. You also have other ways to talk about cybercrime.
I'm just telling you, look, when you talk of investment, the United States, I remember I attended, a conference on this issue of corruption, and they have the capacity to trace almost all investment and where the money is coming from and where the money is going to. A number of advanced countries have that, and there's also some laws, I think, that also punishes or takes care of recipient country. But what I'm saying is very simple, that yes, it will affect trade between the two countries, but we need to find out in what direction. Look, if they were making billions or trillions of dollars from Nigeria, sincerely, they won't ban us. Believe me, they won't ban us.
Like you rightly said, they must have examined this consequences of their action and made that decision. I bet we haven't seen the end of this. Gentlemen, we'll fast run out of time. I'd like to say a very big thank you to you, Ibidolapo Ajayi, who joined us from Texas in the United States, and Ambassador Joe Keshi. Thank you very much for your time and contribution to the program. It's been a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Okay, this is where we drop the anchor on today's edition of The Conversation. The first half of the show, we did talk about flooding in Nigeria. We just x-rayed the decision by the United Arab Emirates to issue a visa ban on nationals of 20 African nations. And Gbenga Aborowa, thanks for being a part of today's program. And
don't forget, the conversation does not end here. You can join us on social media at News Central TV. I am Rita Omodia. Join us again on Friday for another edition of The Conversation.